I'm a guy that's 26. Each day I build with bricks. I like Star Wars playset. I'm Rich Boy J. Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here back with another video, and this is going to be another episode of Your Questions Answered. If you're unfamiliar with the series, Your Questions Answered is a Q&A series that I do here on the channel, so if you want to see one of your questions answered, leave it in the comment section below. Check back next week to see if you made the cut. First question is going to come from Trevor04. He says, another great episode. Would you consider doing a mini building series on your next vehicle mock? Would love to see your process from start to finish. You did a series on the Falcon mock, but I'd like to see a series in the style of your new updates where you set goals and build throughout the episode. So this is actually a great question and something that I've really wanted to do here on this channel, and I feel like I've tried to do it, but I feel like with vehicles, it doesn't really suit my building style. Now what I mean by that is when it comes to building a vehicle, like oftentimes every single little thing you need to do involves so much thought and design process, and it's not something that you can necessarily just force. Like you can't just sit down and say, okay, I'm going to complete this section in this next hour or 2 hours and it's going to be perfect and I'm just going to move on with the build. With a vehicle, you really have to think hard about, what your design is going to be, and if that's going to be the best possible design, that'll flow well with other things, and you get to other sections, and then that impacts what you can do for previous sections that you've already done. And I feel like that's just a lot of pressure when designing a vehicle. Like for me, I really like to sit down and think about it, and sometimes I need to step away and go do something else, or just, I don't know, I guess for me, I don't know, there might be people out there who can do a vehicle series and really pump out a nicely designed vehicle while documenting the process along the way. But just with the way I build, I don't think I have a consistent enough process of building. I don't know, there could be a week where I just don't really designing something that I'm happy with, and then that would just have to be what we'd have to accept. And I don't know, I don't think that makes for a very compelling build series for a vehicle. So at some point, maybe. I'm certainly not saying it's impossible, but with for the gunship, for example, I'd spent so much time, late in the night just kind of staring at my computer, figuring out how I wanted to accomplish something. And sometimes it ended up great, sometimes it ended up just not really amounting to anything. So I don't know, I get the feeling it's not something that would translate well to a video. Let me know what you guys think though. I mean, just even from what I've said, I can certainly try to do it at some point, but like I said, I can't guarantee it'll make the most compelling build series. Like with the mocks that I do, the large scale ones, I can put some time into designing something, but once I get a design, I'm pretty good to go on it, and a lot of the video can just be me replicating it or just building something up. There's so many things you can do with a landscape or a big mock that's just things you don't have to put a ton of thought into. But I just feel like with a vehicle, you have to put so much thought into every single tiny aspect of it. But I don't know, what do you guys think about it? Would you like me to at least try it at some point? Or do you kind of see what I mean and understand that maybe it won't make the most entertaining video? Next question comes from Frederick Du Bois, and it's not really a question, it's more so a comment, but I thought it was a really important one and one that I wanted to address here on the YQA series. It says, I found your comments on building large-scale mocks interesting, that you must love the process of building and not just strive for end results. I actually think that you rush your mocks when they near completion. I have been following you for several years and have watched you build Crate, Vardos, Starkiller base from start to finish. Each time you suddenly put deadlines for completion, you rush the last parts of the build, and I can't help but feel a tiny bit disappointed in the end. I really would like to see you put the same care and thought throughout the first brick straight to the last brick of a large-scale mock. Despite that, I think you're an amazingly talented builder, and I really watch your I watch your videos for the large-scale mocks. I'm not even a Star Wars fan. I like the first 3 and the Clone Wars cartoon, but I think the prequels and sequels suck. It's a very interesting grouping of content there for someone who's not a Star Wars fan. But I really did like this comment because I thought it was a very honest impression of a lot of the things I do on this channel, and I definitely agree to an extent. With the Scarif mock, I wouldn't even say that mock was even rushed towards the end. That mock was rushed right from the get-go, just because, it wasn't something that we decided to do with any amount of time in mind. We basically just kind of impromptu were like, let's build Scarif, and let's take it to this convention. So we had a hard deadline right from the start, and we pretty much had to do the mock in a month and a half. So I think Scarif is maybe the outlier here. But obviously next up was Crate, and I think with Crate, like that was the one where we, set aside what we thought was a considerable amount of time to finish the mock. And then of course, at the very end, it did end up being rushed when it came to getting the cave sections done, and maybe even some parts of the exterior done because we just got so close to the convention. Vardos, however, that's the one that I didn't take to a convention, and I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm not remembering it correctly, but I'm pretty sure with Vardos, like I wasn't like, oh no, I need to get this mock done by this certain point. I pretty much just finished Vardos and then I record the video and then we were good to go. So I do think if you're looking for that one build where you got, 100% of me from the start to the very end, I think Vardos would definitely be an example of that. And I think the results showed for it. I think Vardos was just a very unique looking build, and one to the state that, I mean, outside of Starkiller base, I'm most proud of probably. So then there's Starkiller, which I guess is the most egregious example of this. Now I know whenever I first started Starkiller, I'm pretty sure the plan was to not take it to any convention. Like, when I started building it, I basically just wanted to build it to where it was sturdy enough and modular enough for me to get downstairs for when I recorded my final video. But the plan with Starkiller was never really to build it for any particular type of convention. And then the timeline just kind of ended up being the case where, like, Brick Rodeo, I guess, got canceled year before last, but then it actually happened last year. So I was like, maybe I should actually take this to Brick Rodeo. And then there kind of became a self-imposed deadline. And then I ended up in a scenario where, I was very rushed to build and finish the build at the very end. But I want to say this about Starkiller. Starkiller, I think it was just one of those unique scenarios where I just wasn't pretty much ever going to be able to see the mock fully built outside of that convention because it just ended up being too big. Like, I thought it might be, small enough to fit downstairs in the living room. But even there, it would just not really be a build that I could have down there. So with Starkiller, I was very, very motivated to get it finished for the convention because there was definitely that feeling of like, if it doesn't get finished for this convention, then I'll probably never get to see it, finished completely unless I want to wait another year for another convention to come around. And I think that was just very unreasonable. So I think in any other scenario, I would have been very happy just taking whatever I had with Starkiller and then, bringing that home and then finishing the mock to perfect completion, so to speak. However, because the mock was just so big and I literally didn't have the facilities to accommodate it, I think that's what was really damning about the Starkiller build. But as a positive note for Camino though, like, yes, my plan is to take it to Brick Rodeo and Brick World Chicago, but if I'm not done with that mock before those conventions, I'm not gonna like rush it to get it completed for the conventions. Camino is gonna be small enough for me to just have over in the game room. That's where Vardos was. And if I don't get to a point where I'm super happy with calling the mock completed, I'm not just gonna like tear it down on the way back, right? Like, I'll bring it back and then finish the mock the way I think it needs to be finished for my channel. So you guys will get to see that. So, I mean, I do apologize that it has kind of become a recurring theme where, I start a mock, I put so much effort into it pretty much up to the very end, and the very end ends up getting rushed. But that's not something that I really want to be known for. And I think, hopefully you guys are happy with the fact that that's absolutely not going to be the case with Camino. Camino will be finished. Even if it's not finished for the conventions, I take it to 100%. It will be finished for whatever videos I decide to do with it here on this channel, because there's nothing preventing me from just bringing it back here and keeping it in the place it's always been. And it's not too big to fit in any room in this house. But I did really appreciate your comment. I thought it was a very thoughtful and honest comment, and a good point of self-reflection for me, and good feedback from you guys. A lot of people are very positive in the community, and I appreciate it, because just for my own mental health, knowing that I can come here and look for positivity and positive energy is a good thing. But I think even when it's something maybe not necessarily positive, but still constructive like this, those are still comments I really do appreciate. So, if any of you have something, constructive you want to say about my builds, my channel, anything like that, I think I'm always open to that. I'm not a super defensive person when it comes to stuff like that. Like, I'm always very receptive to improvement or ideas for improvement. So don't be afraid to let me know. Next question comes from JNW Productions. He says, hey Jay, so I remember the first video I watched by you was the in and out modular build, which was to this day, my favorite mock by you. That's so interesting that was how you found me. Wondering in the future if you're open to making instructions for that, and if you'll do more custom modulars. Your biggest fan, JMW. So I never made instructions for it particularly, but I have the LDD file, and I'll pretty much just give that to anyone who asks, because I don't think it's a particularly complex design. Like, I'm more than happy just letting people, rebuild that using the LDD file if that's something they want to do. So if any of you want the LDD file to that build, let me know. I'll post the link and you can build one for yourself. As for other custom modulars, I think absolutely. I say this time and time again. Yes, one of my long-term goals, just as a person, but also for my channel, is to build a Lego city, a very large and complex Lego city. And what comes with that is probably building a lot of quote unquote modular buildings, or just buildings in general. So I would absolutely be into this at some point. I can't say that this is something that'll happen anytime soon, just because I'm so focused on Star Wars right now. There's so many Star Wars builds I want to get done. And at the moment, I don't have the ability to just have multiple large-scale builds going on at once. I gotta pick and choose. And right now, Star Wars is the priority for me. But down the line, you could absolutely expect that. Next question comes from Brickopotamus. He says, YQA, I'd love to hear your in-depth thoughts on black box art. Do you think it will stick? Do you prefer it? Personally, I think a lot of it is Lego being lazy and needing less design work. All right, so this is, I guess, the main topic for the video. This is probably gonna be like the thumbnail and the title of the video, but I think a lot of people are very correct about their assessment of the black boxes, but there's one point that I brought up before that I think is something that not enough people are talking about, that I think is maybe the bigger issue when it comes to the Lego black boxes. So your point is, you're saying you think it's lazy. I don't think that's the case. I think Lego could easily just pay someone to make a box design like they've been doing for years, like they do with all these other sets, and that would not be a big deal for them at all. I don't think Lego is cutting costs by saying we're not gonna pay these designers to design these boxes because that's too much money. I don't think that's the case at all. I don't really view this as laziness per se. I think this is a very concerted effort to get a specific aesthetic when it comes to these boxes. So that's just my opinion. But there are two, I think, very big issues when it comes to it. One, this is probably the most obvious one. They just don't look nearly as interesting as boxes that do have actual box art. I've talked about this before, but take a set, for example, like the UCS Sandcrawler. I think that is the epitome of Lego box art. And even the modular bookshop, I think that might be the last modular with box art. And then compare it to other similar sets, like even the boutique hotel. You have this just very intricate looking build, and the back of the box just does nothing for it. Even the Sonic set, for example, I feel like Sonic is characterized by those bright sky backgrounds, and having the black box, I think, actively hurts the appeal of the set and hurts the appeal of the box. I think, box art is still important to an extent. I know a lot of people maybe could not care less about it. They just go and buy the set they want. But I do think that the box art definitely impacts the appeal of a set. I think, for example, if you look at the Hidden Side sets, where it was almost kind of difficult to decipher, what the actual Lego set looked like because the box art was just too complex. I think that hurt it, and I think that the fact that the black box art is too simple hurts those sets in that regard. But here's my second point, and this is actually the bigger issue I have when it comes to the black box art. The black box art is part of Lego's, Adults Welcome campaign, and I mean, I've had my gripes with them kind of hardcore pandering to the adult market. I understand that it's probably very successful and there's more adults buying Lego now than ever. So I understand it from a marketing standpoint. However, I think that it kind of goes against maybe the ideology of the company and a lot of the core Lego values. When I look at the black box art and this Adults Welcome marketing, what it's telling me is, hey, look, we know Lego's a children's toy, and you should feel pathetic if you walk out of here with one of these big colorful little kids boxes. But you don't have to buy those, man. Come buy this black box. You can feel like a secure adult buying a Lego set if you walk out of the store with one of those black boxes. And I think that's my biggest issue. I think Lego is almost implicitly sending the message of like, you know, which sets are okay for adults to buy and which sets aren't okay for adults to buy. And I know that's not what they're explicitly saying, because I mean, all of Lego is for everyone, obviously. Like, that's not an argument I have to make. But when you're making this clear divide as to like which sets are quote unquote for adults and which sets are for kids, I think that you're kind of defying like the core ideology of Lego, the fact that it is for everybody and it is a timeless toy in that regard, right? Like, you shouldn't necessarily feel more secure buying this black box set than buying like a friend set, right? Because once again, like, these sets are for everybody. I think the same way that Lego would tell you if you have a little boy who's interested in Lego Friends, like, they shouldn't feel deterred from buying it just because it's in the pink box. I think that it should also be consistent with that when it comes to the black boxes. But the fact that they've made a decision to make it a black box tells me that like they're like effectively trying to create that divide. They're trying to make certain sets that feel more acceptable to adults, as opposed to just treating them all like they're Lego sets and then letting the consumer decide, you know, which is the best Lego set for me. You know, and I think that's probably my biggest issue with it. Like, I feel like from Lego's perspective, they had to put it in this black box to make it feel more premium, make it feel more adult. But I feel like part of the charm of Lego is that like a set can look like a children's toy, but still be accessible to adults. It would still be something that adults can feel proud when they buy. And that's just not really the impression that I'm getting from the black boxes. So I'd love to get you guys' opinion on this black box scenario. Does it just seem like pure laziness to you? Do you think it has any real impact on how attractive a Lego set is? And 3, like, how do you feel about my point in regards to it kind of creating a line as for which sets adults should feel comfortable buying versus sets that adults should not feel comfortable buying? Final question is going to come from Matija Kovac. I really hope I pronounced that correctly. He says, since you are a big ISD and interior fan, have you ever considered building Raskolnikov's ISD Aggressor? This is a great question. I think his Star Destroyers are great builds inside and out, but it's not maybe my preference when it comes to builds like that. Like, if I did decide to build his Star Destroyer, I would probably just leave the interior out. Like, when it comes to Star Destroyers and I guess capital ships like that, where you have to cram the interior in it, and I'm not saying it's done poorly at all. Like, he does an insane job with the interiors he puts into his Star Destroyers. But for me, at least, when you have to go through such extreme lengths to, you know, fit convincing interiors into builds like that, it almost takes away from it for me. Like, I would rather have a Star Destroyer build that's an exterior and then have like a separate build for, you know, the interior of a Star Destroyer, if that makes sense, rather than trying to cram the Star Destroyer interior into the form factor of the Star Destroyer when you have a capital ship like that in reality should be so much bigger than it actually is, and there's just no real way to get a convincing interior in a ship like that. I don't know if other people share that opinion. That's just kind of how I feel when it comes to like capital ships like that. Like, people, I guess, complained about the UCS Star Destroyer not having an interior, and I honestly just could not care less. Like, the fact that it's cheaper because of that is totally fine with me. If it's a minifig scale ship, then yeah, absolutely, or something along those lines. But when it comes to, you know, like the big capital ships and stuff like that, I don't feel like I need an interior on the inside of it, because you're never going to get anything that looks like convincing at all, because, you know, it's a capital ship. Like, it's so much bigger than the Lego representation is supposed to be. Now, when it comes to Lego sets, I think I can have an appreciation for the things they do with like the interiors to make it more like comprehensive a playset, right? Like the I don't say UCS, the First Order Star Destroyer playset. I'm always praising the interior of that set just because, one, it looks really good, and two, I think it's packed full of opportunities for play for kids who are going to want to have fun with it. But when it comes to a mock, I don't know, I guess I just have different feelings for it. I don't really know why. It just feels different to me. Like when it comes to a mock like that, it just doesn't mean a ton to me to have an interior and something like that. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about it. Are you fans of interiors and, like, you know, Star Destroyers? Are you big Star Destroyers like that? Or do you kind of align with me where it's not so much as a big deal for you? But honestly, this video went a lot longer than I expected it to be, so I think we're going to end it right here. So that's going to finish things up. If you like what I do, go ahead and support the video by hitting the like button, support the channel by smashing that subscribe button, and I'll be back again very soon.